G'day everybody, it's Patrick, the CADASIL vlog bloke here. Today I want to talk about how it was I came to be diagnosed with CADASIL. It was in November of 1998. I received a phone call to say that Mum had a stroke, and she was in John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle here in New South Wales in Australia. So my wife, who was 4 months pregnant at the time, and I drove up to see her. And the family was in a reasonable state of shock. It was a completely unexpected stroke. She didn't really have any risk factors. She was very active, loved her gardening. She worked as a cleaner, so a manual job. Didn't drink much, smoked occasionally, but not enough to think, she better watch out with that. So we didn't really know what was going on, what could explain it. A neurologist who was seeing her at the time, within a couple of days, wondered if she might have CADASIL. Now, remember, this is late 1998, and the term CADASIL had only been coined by a French neurologist in Paris in 1993. So, a mere 5 years later, Keith, the neurologist, not only knew the term but also knew a little bit about the disease. And so Mum had a skin biopsy taken and it was sent to Paris, which, as far as I know, was the only place in the world that did testing for CADASIL at the time. And 5 or 6 months later, Mum's diagnosis came back and it was CADASIL. So all we knew at the time was what we were told, because there was no literature for us to read. Apparently there are about 500 families in the world who'd been affected by CADASIL. The number of cases wasn't known, but that made it quite rare, and so we felt lucky. Yay, rare disease. But we didn't really appreciate much more about it at the time. In 2001, the elder of my two sisters gave birth to her fifth child, and after that she went into a catatonic state for quite a few days. She was also at John Hunter Hospital, and Dr. Chris Levi, a neurologist there, was called in on her case. Upon speaking to my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he informed Chris that Mum had been diagnosed with CADASIL, and this prompted Chris to immediately consider it as something that might be affecting my sister. Subsequently, my sister came out of a catatonic state. I'm not sure how it was resolved, but it happened. And bloods were taken, and a few months later it was confirmed that my sister had CADASIL also. By this time I'd started to find out a little bit of information about CADASIL, including the notion that migraines with aura can be one of the major symptoms of CADASIL. And this started to worry me greatly, because I'd been having migraines with aura since the age of 26, and I was 36 by the time Mum was diagnosed. So as time started to go by, I freaked more and more about whether I might have it, and I began living every day thinking about CADASIL constantly, and with the migraines as a constant reminder, it was hard to get my mind off whether or not I had the disease. It wasn't until late in 2005, I think, that we all had a family conference with Chris at John Hunter Hospital about CADASIL. He told us a bit more about it, about how it was inherited, the pros and cons of getting tested, and do you really want to know whether you have it or not. By this time, of course, there was Mum and one of my sisters had been confirmed, I knew that it was a 50-50 chance that I had it. Um, After that conference had concluded, I said to Chris, I've been living as if I do have it for 5 years, maybe going on 6 years by then. So I absolutely need to know whether I have it or not. And he was agreeable to me being tested. The younger of my sisters also got tested, and my brother decided not to. I had a blood test taken, and it was sent to Flinders University in Adelaide here in Australia, which was testing for CADASIL by that time. And in June of 2006, we met Chris up at Newcastle in his office, and it was confirmed that I had CADASIL. It was very traumatic, but not unexpected. I kind of was 90 to 95% sure that I had it, so it wasn't a diagnosis that came out of the blue for me, that's for sure. So even though I knew that it was likely to be the case, I was still distressed, obviously. Oddly enough, I had to drive back that afternoon to Sydney because I had to go to work the next day. Having that diagnosis, having to drive back down the freeway was almost automatic in a way. And I went to work the next day. Wow. Turned out that the younger of my two sisters didn't have CADASIL, so that was good. My brother is about 21 months younger than me. I'm almost 58. And he seems fine. He doesn't show any symptoms of having it, so it's probably likely that he doesn't have it. Anything's possible, I suppose, but yeah. So that's a very brief story about how I came to be diagnosed with CADASIL. We also think in retrospect that Mum's mother had CADASIL. Before she died, it wasn't really known about. So yeah, I mean, why do we think she had it? Because by her mid-50s, she was almost certainly in the strong grips of dementia. Her final years were spent in a nursing home, bedridden, not being able to feed herself, clean herself, clothe herself, or move herself. So the only other worry I had after being diagnosed was whether or not our daughter had it. By the time I was diagnosed, she was 7 years old, close to it. But she went and saw Chris 2 years ago, got blood taken, and fortunately, she doesn't have it. So now I live the best way that I can in terms of health and exercise. I did have a major stroke last year, so that set things back a little bit. But resilience and stoicism is the way to go for me. Okay, thanks for listening. Peace and love to all. Catch you next time.